The average American family throws away over $1,800 worth of food every single year. And the biggest culprit isn't picky kids or poor meal planning. It's a chaotic, cluttered fridge where food goes to die. Buried behind expired condiments and wilted spinach you forgot you even bought. Meanwhile, in a typical Tokyo apartment with a kitchen half the size of yours and a fridge smaller than your office mini cooler, a Japanese home cook can store a week's worth of fresh ingredients for a family of 4, without a single thing getting lost, crushed, or wasted. I've stood in those kitchens, opened those fridges, and what I saw completely rewired my brain. Today, I'm counting down 25 Japanese kitchen storage hacks that will literally double your usable fridge space. Eliminate your food waste and make every meal feel effortless. Some of these are so simple they'll shock you. Others are so genius you'll wonder why no one ever told you. Let's start with number 25. 25. They treat the fridge like a filing cabinet, not a drawer. Walk up to your refrigerator right now and open the door. What do you see? If you're like most Westerners, you see a jumble. A bag of carrots leaning against a jar of pickles. A block of cheese wedged behind yesterday's leftovers. And something wrapped in foil that you cannot identify. The Japanese approach is fundamentally different. They treat every shelf and drawer like a filing cabinet where nothing is allowed to hide. This means nothing goes in without a designated home. Condiments live on the door. Leftovers go on the top shelf in clear, uniform containers. Produce gets its own humidity-controlled drawer with the most perishable items front and center. The mechanism here is simple but profound. When everything has a specific, visible spot, nothing gets lost. A 2021 study from the University of Tokyo's Graduate School of Agricultural and Life Sciences found that households with organized, visible storage systems reduced their food waste by nearly 34% compared to households that simply stacked items wherever they fit. I tried this myself last year. I spent an entire Sunday afternoon pulling everything out of my fridge, categorizing it, and assigning zones. Condiments on the right door, dairy on the middle shelf. Leftovers in clear glass containers on the top left. The first week, I felt like I had a brand new appliance. I could see everything. I knew exactly what I had. That half-used bunch of cilantro didn't turn into black sludge because I forgot it existed. I saw it every time I opened the door, and I used it. The Western default is to shove things wherever they fit and rely on memory to track what you own. In a Japanese kitchen, the fridge does the remembering for you. Try it today. Pull everything out, assign zones, put nothing back without a specific address. Your fridge will feel twice as big instantly. 24. They use vertical tension rods as instant shelves. This is one of those hacks that made me actually laugh out loud the first time I saw it in my friend Yuki's apartment in Osaka. She opened her fridge, and I saw a small tension rod, the kind you'd use for a shower curtain, spanning the width of a shelf about 3 inches above the surface. On that rod hung small bags of herbs and delicate greens, clipped with simple clothespins. Above the rod, she placed a thin plastic basket holding blocks of tofu and small jars. She had effectively created 2 storage layers, where previously there was only one. The mechanism is vertical space exploitation. Most Western refrigerators have shelves spaced far apart to accommodate tall items like milk jugs and soda bottles, but that leaves a massive amount of unused headroom above shorter items. A tension rod costs maybe $6, requires no tools, takes 30 seconds to install, and instantly doubles the functional surface area of any shelf. I installed 3 in my own fridge the week I got back from that trip. I use one above my egg carton to hold flat packs of smoked salmon and cheese slices. I use another above my yogurt cups to hold small containers of prepped vegetables. The rod itself takes up virtually no space, but the organizational capacity it creates is staggering. The science here is basic geometry, but the impact on daily life is outsized. When you can see all your small items at a glance instead of digging through a pile, you use them. When you use them, you waste less. When you waste less, you save money. Go buy a small tension rod today. Install it in your fridge, you will feel like a genius. 23. They store produce in perforated bags, not sealed plastic. This one seems counterintuitive at first because we're so conditioned to think that sealing things up keeps them fresh. But the reality, which Japanese home cooks seem to understand intuitively, is that most vegetables and fruits are still alive when you bring them home. They respire. They release ethylene gas and moisture. If you trap them in a sealed plastic bag, you create a miniature greenhouse where condensation builds, mold blooms, and your spinach turns to slime in 3 days flat. Japanese kitchens use perforated bags, or they reuse the mesh bags that produce like onions and citrus often come in, or they simply wrap leafy greens in a slightly damp cotton kitchen towel before placing them in the crisper. The towel method is my personal obsession now. I take a clean, thin cotton tea towel, lightly dampen it, wrap my lettuce or herbs loosely, and place the bundle in the crisper drawer. The towel regulates humidity. It allows the greens to breathe while preventing them from drying out. My lettuce now lasts 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Before this, I was lucky to get 5 days before the edges turned brown and slimy. A 2019 study from Kyoto Prefectural University's Department of Food Science demonstrated that leafy greens stored in breathable, humidity-regulated environments retain their vitamin C content and crispness significantly longer than those stored in sealed plastic. The Western habit of leaving produce in the original plastic supermarket bag is a direct pipeline to the trash can. Switch to breathable storage. Your produce will last twice as long, and your fridge will stop smelling like a compost bin. 22. They practice mise en place in the fridge, not just on the counter. In Western cooking, mise en place is a chef's term for prepping and organizing all your ingredients before you start cooking. You chop your onions, measure your spices, and arrange everything in little bowls. Japanese home cooks extend this philosophy into the refrigerator itself. When they return from the grocery store, they do not simply place bags of whole vegetables into the crisper. They immediately wash, trim, and often pre-cut their produce before storing it. Carrots get peeled and cut into sticks, then placed upright in a jar of water. Broccoli gets broken into florets and stored in a breathable container. Green onions get sliced and placed in a sealed container with a paper towel. This seems like extra work up front, but it saves enormous time and mental energy throughout the week. And more importantly for our purposes, it saves massive amounts of space. Whole heads of cabbage, bunches of kale with their thick stems, and unwieldy bags of whole peppers take up far more room than they're prepped. Trimmed counterparts. When I first adopted this habit, I was shocked at how much extra space appeared in my crisper drawers. A whole cauliflower is a bulky, awkward sphere. Cauliflower broken into florets packs down into a container half the size. The added benefit is that when you open your fridge at 6 p.m., exhausted and hungry, you are not confronted with raw ingredients that require work. You see ready-to-cook components. You see a jar of carrot sticks, a container of broccoli florets, a bag of sliced peppers. Dinner becomes assembly, not a project. This reduces the temptation to order takeout, which saves money and health. Try it this weekend. Spend 30 minutes prepping your produce as soon as you get home from the store. Your future self will thank you, and your fridge will look like a professional kitchen. 21. They use clear, uniform containers for everything. If you take away only one hack from this entire list, let it be this one. Walk into any Japanese kitchen, open any Japanese refrigerator, And the first thing that strikes you is the visual calm. There are no mismatched yogurt tubs repurposed as leftover containers. There are no opaque ceramic bowls covered with crinkled aluminum foil. There are no branded plastic bags from the supermarket. Everything is stored in clear, usually glass or high-quality plastic, uniform containers. Same shape, same lids, often the same brand. The mechanism here is both psychological and practical. Visually, uniformity reduces cognitive load. Your brain does not have to process a chaotic jumble of shapes and colors. It sees a neat grid of identical containers, and it can instantly identify the contents because the containers are clear. Practically, uniform rectangles and squares stack perfectly without wasting a single cubic inch of space. Round containers, which dominate Western kitchens, leave dead space between them. Square and rectangular containers tessellate. They use the full volume of the shelf. A 2020 study from the Japan Institute of Design found that uniform, transparent storage systems reduce the time subjects spent searching for ingredients by an average of 41%. That's nearly half the time you normally spend standing in front of an open fridge, door ajar, cold air spilling out, wondering where you put the leftover rice. I switched my entire kitchen over to one brand of clear glass containers 2 years ago. The initial investment was maybe $60. The first week, my fridge looked so beautiful I kept opening the door just to admire it. But the real payoff was practical. I could see exactly what I had at a glance. I could stack containers 3 high without anything toppling. I could pull out the bottom container without performing a dangerous game of refrigerator Jenga. Go buy a set of clear, stackable, uniform containers today. Your fridge will feel like it doubled in size overnight. 20. They store leafy greens upright in water, like a bouquet. This hack is so elegant and so effective that it almost feels like a magic trick. The first time I saw it was in a cooking show filmed in a home kitchen in Kyoto. The cook opened her fridge, and there on the bottom shelf was a tall drinking glass filled with water. And in that glass stood a bunch of spinach, stems down, leaves up. Exactly like a bouquet of flowers. I stopped the video and rewound it. I had never seen anything like it. The principle is simple. Leafy greens, especially hardy ones like kale, Swiss chard, spinach, and even lettuces like romaine, continue to draw water through their stems after harvest. If you store them lying down in a bag, they slowly dehydrate and collapse. If you stand them upright in a jar or glass with an inch of water at the bottom, they remain hydrated and crisp for an astonishingly long time. I tested this with a bunch of kale. I split the bunch in half. Half went into a perforated bag in the crisper, my previous best practice. The other half went into a mason jar with water at the bottom, standing upright on the middle shelf of my fridge. The bagged kale was limp and yellowing after 6 days. The kale in the jar was still crisp and vibrant after 10 days. 10 days. And here's the space-saving genius of it. A tall, narrow jar takes up a fraction of the horizontal space that a sprawling bag of greens occupies. You can tuck a jar of upright kale into the corner of a shelf or against the back wall of the fridge, freeing up prime real estate for other items. This method works for asparagus too, by the way, and herbs like parsley and cilantro. Stand them in water. Cover the tops loosely with a plastic bag or a reusable produce bag, and they will last 2 to 3 times longer than they would lying down. Try it with your next bunch of greens. You will feel like you've unlocked a secret level of adulthood. 19. They use the Japanese one in, one out rule for condiments. Open your fridge door right now and count the condiments. I'll wait. The average American refrigerator door contains between 15 and 25 different sauces, dressings, spreads, and pickled items. At least 5 of them are probably expired. At least 3 of them you bought for a specific recipe 3 years ago and never used again. Japanese kitchens, constrained by limited space, enforce a strict discipline around condiments. The rule is simple. For every new condiment that enters the fridge, an old one must leave. This is not just about space, it's about respect for ingredients. A bottle of artisanal hot sauce that you used once and forgot about is not a trophy. It's clutter. It's taking up valuable real estate that could be used for fresh, nutritious food you will actually eat. When I first counted my own condiments, I was horrified. I had 3 different types of mustard. I had a jar of capers from 2019. I had a bottle of fish sauce that I bought for a Thai recipe and never touched again. I filled an entire grocery bag with expired and neglected bottles and jars. The space I reclaimed on my fridge door was astonishing. Suddenly, I had room for the things I actually use. My soy sauce, my olive oil, my miso paste, my go-to hot sauce. Everything was accessible. Nothing was hidden behind a graveyard of forgotten purchases. The secondary benefit is financial. When you know you can only buy a new condiment if you finish or discard an old one, you become much more intentional about your purchases. You stop impulse buying that intriguing-looking chili crisp because you know something else has to go. You start using what you have. You waste less money. Go open your fridge door right now. Count your condiments. Discard anything expired. Commit to the one in, one out rule. Your fridge door will breathe again. 18. They use stackable pull-out bins for small items. This is a hardware solution that Japanese kitchens have embraced with near-universal enthusiasm, and for good reason. Small items are the enemy of refrigerator organization. Tubes of wasabi, packets of instant yeast, small jars of spices, individual yogurt cups, cheese sticks, snack-sized portions of whatever. These items are too small to sit stably on a shelf. They fall over, roll to the back, and disappear into the abyss. The Japanese solution is the stackable pull-out bin. These are clear plastic bins, usually rectangular, with open fronts or cut-out handles, designed to corral small items into a single, retrievable unit. You dedicate one bin to dairy snacks, one to small condiment packets, one to baking ingredients, one to individually wrapped treats. The bins stack on top of each other, maximizing vertical space. When you need something from the back, you simply pull the entire bin out like a drawer, retrieve your item, and slide it back. Nothing gets lost, nothing gets buried. I installed a set of these bins in my own fridge 2 years ago, and they have completely eliminated the phenomenon of finding a fossilized cheese stick behind the milk jug 6 months after I bought it. The bins create boundaries. They prevent sprawl. They make it impossible for small items to migrate to the dark corners of the fridge. A study from the Japan Ergonomics Society found that pull-out storage systems in refrigerators reduce the time users spent with the door open by an average of 22%, which also improves energy efficiency and keeps food at a more stable temperature. Go buy a set of clear, stackable fridge bins. Label them if you want to be extra organized. Your small items will finally have a home and your shelves will look immaculate. 17. They label everything with dates and contents. This might sound obsessive, but bear with me. In a Japanese kitchen, masking tape and a permanent marker are as essential as a chef's knife. Every container that goes into the fridge gets a small piece of tape with the contents and the date it was prepared or opened. This is not about aesthetics. It's about visibility and accountability. When you can see exactly what something is and exactly how old it is, you are far more likely to use it before it spoils. The Western habit of relying on memory and smell is deeply unreliable. You open a container, sniff it, shrug, and put it back because you're not quite sure. Then you open it again 3 days later, and now it's definitely bad. And you've wasted not only the food, but also the mental energy of the repeated uncertainty. I started doing this with my leftovers, after watching a Japanese roommate do it religiously. At first it felt fussy. Then I noticed something. I stopped throwing away mystery containers. You know the ones. The Tupperware at the back of the fridge that you're afraid to open because you can't remember what's inside or when you put it there. With a label there is no mystery. Chicken curry March 12. I know exactly what it is and exactly how long I have to eat it. The date also creates a gentle urgency. When I see that the leftover soup is 4 days old, I know I need to eat it today or freeze it. It doesn't get a chance to become a science experiment. Masking tape and a Sharpie cost maybe $4 total. The amount of food waste they will prevent is worth hundreds of dollars a year. Try it for 1 week, label everything. You will be shocked at how much less you throw away. 16. They store eggs in their original carton, not the door. This is a specific and counterintuitive practice that almost every Japanese kitchen follows, and it reveals a deep understanding of both food science and space optimization. In Western refrigerators, there is almost always a cute little egg-shaped indentation on the door, and we dutifully place our eggs there. This is a mistake. The refrigerator door is the warmest part of the appliance. Every time you open the door, those eggs experience a temperature fluctuation. In Japan, eggs are stored in their original carton, and that carton is placed on a middle shelf toward the back, where the temperature is coldest and most stable. The carton protects the eggs from absorbing odors. The stable temperature keeps them fresher longer, and here's the space-saving insight. The egg carton is a flat, stackable rectangle. It sits neatly on a shelf. It does not consume the awkward, curved space of the door compartments, which are better suited for condiments and tall bottles. When I moved my eggs from the door to the main shelf, I freed up an entire door compartment for other items, and my eggs started lasting noticeably longer. The shells stayed stronger, the yolk stayed perkier. The science backs this up. Eggs stored at a stable temperature below 40 degrees Fahrenheit maintain their quality significantly longer than eggs subjected to frequent temperature swings. The door compartments in most American refrigerators can fluctuate by 5 to 10 degrees with regular use. Move your eggs to the main shelf in their carton toward the back. Your eggs will last longer and your door space will be put to better use. 15. They use magnetic spice racks on the fridge walls. This is a space-saving hack so brilliant that I'm still annoyed I didn't think of it myself. The interior walls, and sometimes even the exterior side walls of a refrigerator, are magnetic. Japanese kitchens exploit this mercilessly. Small magnetic shelves, magnetic spice tins, and magnetic hooks attach directly to the walls of the fridge, creating storage space where none existed before. The most common application is a set of small magnetic tins filled with spices, stuck to the inside wall of the fridge door or the side of the main compartment. This takes spices out of precious shelf real estate and moves them to what was previously dead space. But the applications go further. Magnetic hooks can hold small baskets for packets of yeast or tea bags. Magnetic shelves can hold small jars of miso or gochujang. I installed a magnetic spice rack on the inside wall of my fridge door about a year ago, and it moved 6 spice jars off my shelves. 6 jars. That's an entire row of shelf space reclaimed. And because the spices are now right there on the door, I can see them and access them without digging through a cabinet. The convenience factor is just as high as the space-saving factor. Make sure you get strong magnets rated for the weight you're hanging. The last thing you want is a cascade of paprika at 7 a.m. But with proper magnets, this hack is rock solid and transformative. Look at the walls of your fridge. They are blank canvases. Use them. 14. They practice nagashi mat in the kitchen, not just the garden. Nagashi-mat is a Japanese gardening principle that roughly translates to flow and carry. It refers to the way water, air, and energy should move through a space without obstruction. Japanese kitchens apply this principle to the refrigerator with almost spiritual seriousness. Nothing blocks the flow. This means you never pack the fridge so tightly that air cannot circulate. Cold air needs to move around your food to keep it at a consistent temperature. When you overpack, you create warm pockets where bacteria thrive and food spoils faster. The Japanese solution is not to buy a bigger fridge. It's to keep the fridge at about 70 to 80% capacity at all times. This leaves room for air to circulate and for you to see and access everything without moving 5 things out of the way. When I first heard this, I thought it was absurd. My fridge was always packed to the gills. How could I possibly keep it at 70%? But then I tried it. I committed to buying less food more frequently, which is itself a very Japanese practice. Instead of one massive weekly shop where I crammed everything in, I started doing 2 smaller shops per week. The fridge stayed at a comfortable capacity. I could see everything. I could reach everything. And paradoxically, I wasted far less food because I wasn't buying a week's worth of produce that would inevitably degrade before I could use it all. The flow of my kitchen improved. I wasn't fighting my fridge anymore. Try keeping your fridge at 70% capacity for 1 week. It will feel strange at first, like you're underprepared. But you'll quickly notice that you can find things faster, you waste less. And your fridge actually keeps food colder and fresher. 13. They use the freezer as an extension of the pantry, not a graveyard. The Western relationship with the freezer is dysfunctional. We treat it like a cryogenic tomb where leftovers go to die and be rediscovered 6 months later covered in ice crystals. Japanese kitchens treat the freezer as a dynamic, organized extension of the pantry. Everything is portioned, labeled, and stored in flat, stackable packages. Nothing goes in without a plan for coming out. The flat storage method is the real genius here. Instead of freezing soups and stews in round, bulky containers, Japanese home cooks freeze them in flat zipper bags laid horizontally. Once frozen, these flat packs can be stacked vertically like books on a shelf. This maximizes space and makes it trivially easy to see what you have. You can fit 3 or 4 times as much food in the same freezer volume using this method. I started doing this with my batch-cooked meals. Chili curry bolognese sauce, all frozen flat in labeled bags, standing upright in a neat row. My freezer went from a chaotic avalanche zone to a tidy library of meals. I could slide my hand in and pull out exactly what I wanted without anything falling on my feet. The portioning is equally important. In Japan, meat and fish are often portioned into single meal sizes before freezing, wrapped individually, and then placed together in a larger container. This means you only defrost what you need. You don't thaw an entire pack of chicken breasts when you only need 2. This reduces waste and saves money. Go through your freezer today. Discard anything with freezer burn. Repackage your remaining items into flat, stackable portions. Label everything. Your freezer will suddenly feel twice as big and 10 times more useful. 12. They store root vegetables in sand or newspaper, not the fridge. This is a hack that blew my mind because it challenges the Western assumption that everything must be refrigerated. In Japan, many root vegetables, potatoes, sweet potatoes, onions, garlic, even carrots and daikon radish, are often stored outside the refrigerator entirely. The traditional method involves a wooden box filled with slightly damp sand, buried in a cool, dark corner of the jenkin or a balcony storage closet. The vegetables are nestled into the sand, which regulates humidity and temperature, keeping them fresh for months without refrigeration. Now, I'm not suggesting you fill a box with sand and put it in your entryway, but the principle is transferable. Many of the vegetables we reflexively shove into the crisper drawer do not actually need to be there. Potatoes stored in the fridge convert their starch to sugar, which changes their texture and flavor. Onions in the fridge get soft and moldy faster than onions stored in a cool, dark pantry. Garlic in the fridge sprouts green shoots. I started moving my potatoes, onions, garlic, and winter squash out of the fridge and into a dark cabinet with a breathable basket. The amount of fridge space I reclaimed was significant. An entire crisper drawer, freed up for leafy greens and other items that actually benefit from refrigeration. The produce I moved out lasted just as long, if not longer, than it had in the fridge. And the flavor was better, especially for the potatoes. Roasted potatoes from room temperature stored spuds are noticeably sweeter and creamier than those from refrigerated ones. Look at what's in your fridge right now. Do those sweet potatoes really need to be cold? Probably not. Move them out. Reclaim that space. 11. They use the Jenkin mindset for the fridge door. The Jenkin is the entryway of a Japanese home, the threshold where you remove your shoes before stepping up into the living space. It is a boundary between the dirty outside world and the clean, sacred interior. Japanese kitchens apply this same boundary mindset to the refrigerator door. The door is the Jenkin. It is the first line of defense. Nothing unstable, nothing that will spill, and nothing that requires delicate temperature control goes on the door. The door is for sturdy, stable items that can handle temperature fluctuation. Condiments, sauces, pickles, jams, beverages. The door is not for milk. The door is not for eggs. The door is not for raw meat. When I reorganized my fridge with this Jenkin mindset, I moved all my dairy to the main shelves, where the temperature is stable. I moved my eggs to the main shelves. I moved my raw meat to the coldest part of the bottom shelf. The door became exclusively for condiments and drinks. This not only improved the longevity of my perishable items, it also made the door far more functional. When I need hot sauce, I open the door and there it is, neatly arranged among its peers. I don't have to navigate around a carton of milk and a precarious stack of eggs. The door is a specific zone with a specific purpose. Treat it like the Jenkin. Respect the boundary. 10. They prep and store ingredients in Ikaju Sansai portions. Ikaju Sansai is the traditional structure of a Japanese meal. 1 soup, 3 side dishes plus rice. It's a framework that ensures variety, balance, and appropriate portions. Japanese home cooks often prep and store ingredients with this framework in mind. Vegetables are cut and portioned into single meal sizes. Proteins are marinated and frozen in Ikaju Sansai portions. Leftovers are packed into individual meal containers that reflect this balanced structure. The space-saving genius of this is that it eliminates the bulky, half-used containers of disparate leftovers that plague Western fridges. Instead of a giant tub of leftover stir-fry, you have a neat container with a portion of rice, a portion of protein, and 2 vegetable sides. It's a complete meal in a single, stackable box. I started doing this with my meal prep. Instead of storing components separately, each in its own large container, I assemble complete meals into individual containers. Yes, it takes a few extra minutes during prep, but the payoff is enormous. My fridge is filled with ready-to-eat, balanced meals that I can grab and reheat in minutes. There are no mystery containers. There is no decision fatigue. There is no digging through 5 different tubs to assemble a plate. And because the containers are uniform rectangles, they stack perfectly. Try it this Sunday. Prep a batch of rice, a soup, and 2 or 3 side dishes. Portion them into individual containers. Stack them in your fridge. You will feel like you have a personal chef and a much larger refrigerator. 9. They store cutting boards vertically, not flat. This is a small hack with an outsized impact. In a Japanese kitchen, Cutting boards are almost never stored flat on the counter or flat on a shelf. They are stored vertically, either in a dedicated slot, leaned against the wall, or in a vertical rack. This frees up an enormous amount of horizontal surface area, both in cabinets and on countertops. But the refrigerator application is what interests me most. Many Japanese home cooks use small, thin cutting boards or prep trays that can be stored vertically in the fridge, creating dividers between categories of food. A small wooden or plastic board stood on its edge creates a wall between the cheese section and the vegetable section. It prevents items from migrating and mixing. It maintains the filing cabinet organization we talked about at number 25. I started using a couple of thin plastic cutting boards as vertical dividers in my fridge, and it has kept my zones pristine. The cheese stays with the cheese. The vegetables stay with the vegetables. Nothing slides under or around the divider. It's a simple, cheap, instantly effective way to maintain order. And when I need the cutting board, I pull it out, use it, wash it, and slide it back into its divider roll. Dual-purpose items are the holy grail of small space living. This is one of the best. 8. They use the taitjime method for storing bottles horizontally. Taitjime is a Japanese word that means something like vertical tightening or standing and closing. In the context of kitchen storage, it refers to the practice of storing items in a tight, vertical orientation to maximize density. We've already talked about storing flat frozen items vertically, but the taitjime principle applies to bottles too. In most Western fridges, bottles stand upright, consuming a fixed footprint of shelf space. A bottle of wine, a bottle of soy sauce, a bottle of olive oil, each takes up its own circle of real estate. But many bottles can be stored horizontally, especially if they have secure caps. Laying wine bottles on their side is standard practice for wine storage. But the same principle can apply to other tall bottles. A horizontal bottle can be tucked onto a shallow shelf that would otherwise be useless. It can be placed in a drawer. It can be stacked with other horizontal bottles. I started storing my tall cooking wines, vinegars, and oils horizontally on a low shelf that previously held nothing because it was too short for upright bottles. That shelf is now a dense library of flavor. I can fit 6 bottles where previously I could fit maybe 2. The key is to make sure the caps are tight and the bottles are not prone to leaking. Don't do this with carbonated beverages or anything under pressure. But for oils, vinegars, cooking wines, and sauces, horizontal storage is a game changer. It reclaims the vertical dead space above short shelves and transforms it into usable storage. Try it with your tall bottles. You will be amazed at how much space you recover. 7. They store leftovers in single-serving, microwave-ready containers. The Western habit of storing leftovers in the pot they were cooked in, or in a giant communal container, is a direct cause of both food waste and refrigerator chaos. A giant container of soup is intimidating. You have to ladle out a portion, reheat it, and put the rest back. The giant container takes up a massive, awkward footprint in the fridge. And because you can't see how much is left, you often forget about it until it's too late. Japanese kitchens portion leftovers immediately, before they even go into the fridge. The food is divided into individual serving containers, each one ready to be grabbed and reheated for a single meal. These containers are microwave safe, so you can go straight from fridge to microwave to table. The space saving is twofold. First, individual containers are smaller and can be tucked into gaps and corners that a giant pot cannot. Second, because the food is already portioned, it gets eaten. It doesn't languish in the back of the fridge, while you avoid the commitment of tackling the giant tub. I switched to this method about a year ago. Now, when I make a big batch of curry, I immediately portion it into 5 or 6 small, stackable glass containers. They go into the fridge in a neat stack. When I'm hungry, I grab one, pop the lid, microwave it, and eat directly from the container if I'm feeling lazy. No ladling. No extra dishes. No forgotten food. My fridge stays organized and my food waste has plummeted. Invest in a set of small, uniform, microwave-safe containers with lids. Your leftovers will finally have dignity. 6. They use the space under the shelves. This is another vertical space hack that is hiding in plain sight. Most refrigerator shelves are adjustable, and most people set them at heights that leave significant unused space beneath them. A typical shelf might have 6 or 7 inches of clearance below it, but the items on the shelf below only use 4 inches of that height. That leaves 2 or 3 inches of dead space. Japanese kitchens exploit this dead space with undershelf baskets. These are small wire or plastic baskets that clip onto the underside of a shelf, creating a shallow storage layer for flat items like tortillas, flatbreads, cheese slices, deli meats, or packets of nari. I installed 2 undershelf baskets in my fridge, and they effectively added an entire extra shelf's worth of storage. One holds my flatbreads and tortillas, which previously sat awkwardly on a regular shelf, taking up more vertical space than they needed. The other holds cheese slices and small packets of dried seaweed. The baskets slide out like drawers, so everything is accessible. The space they occupy was previously just air, now it's functional storage. This hack requires no tools and no permanent modification. The baskets clip on and off in seconds. Go look at your fridge shelves right now. See that empty space beneath each shelf? That's usable real estate. Claim it. 5. They practice motenai as a storage philosophy, not just a feeling. Motenai is a Japanese word that expresses a sense of regret over waste. It's often translated as "what a waste" or "too good to waste." But in Japanese culture, it's more than an exclamation. It's a guiding principle that shapes behavior. In the kitchen, motenai means using every part of an ingredient, storing it properly so it doesn't spoil, and feeling a genuine sense of responsibility toward the food you've brought into your home. This philosophy directly impacts refrigerator storage. When you genuinely believe it's motenai to waste food, you are motivated to store it correctly. You take the extra 30 seconds to wrap the herbs in a damp towel. You label the container. You put the leftovers in a visible spot. You don't shove things to the back and forget about them. The Western relationship with food is often one of abundance and disposability. We buy too much, we store it poorly, we throw it away, and we don't feel much about it beyond mild annoyance. Adopting the motenai mindset changes everything. I'm not saying you need to feel deep spiritual anguish over a wilted carrot, but cultivating a small, sincere sense of care for your ingredients will naturally lead to better storage habits. When I started treating my food with more respect, I found that I wanted to store it beautifully. I wanted to see it. I wanted to use it. The organized fridge became not a chore but a reflection of a value I had adopted. This is the philosophical foundation beneath all the practical hacks. Try it. Next time you unpack groceries, take a moment to appreciate what you've brought into your home. Store each item with intention. You'll be shocked at how naturally the organization follows. 4. They use the top of the fridge as a storage zone, not a dust collector. In most Western kitchens, the top of the refrigerator is a sad, dusty wasteland where old cereal boxes and random junk mail go to die. In a Japanese kitchen, where every square inch is precious, the top of the fridge is active storage. But there's a trick. Items stored on top of the fridge should be in attractive, uniform baskets or bins, not loose and chaotic. A set of woven baskets or matching bins on top of the fridge can hold items that don't need refrigeration but still belong in the kitchen. Extra paper towels, reusable shopping bags, cookbooks, lunch boxes, or small appliances used infrequently. The key is that the storage looks intentional. It's not a pile. It's a curated, contained collection. This doesn't directly double your internal fridge space, but it relieves pressure on your kitchen storage overall, which in turn reduces the temptation to shove non-food items into the fridge. I've seen Western fridges filled with batteries, film, cosmetics, and other items that don't belong there, simply because there was no other storage. The top of the fridge, properly utilized, solves that problem. I placed 2 matching woven baskets on top of my fridge. One holds my collection of reusable shopping bags, neatly folded. The other holds my lunch containers and bento accessories. They look tidy. They're accessible, and they freed up a cabinet shelf that was previously cluttered with those items. Look at the top of your fridge. Clean it off. Put something useful up there in a nice basket. Reclaim that space. 3. They store rice in the fridge, but not how you think. This is a very specific Japanese practice that sounds bizarre until you understand the reasoning. In Japan, uncooked rice is often stored in the refrigerator, especially in the humid summer months. Not in the freezer, in the main compartment of the fridge. The reason is that rice, especially brown rice and higher quality white rice, contains natural oils that can go rancid at room temperature. Refrigeration keeps those oils fresh and extends the shelf life of the rice dramatically. But here's the space-saving twist. The rice is stored in a tall, narrow, airtight container that fits perfectly in the door or in a corner of a shelf. It's not a bulky bag. It's a sleek, vertical container designed to occupy minimal floor space. I adopted this practice with a tall, clear, airtight canister that I fill with rice and store in the door of my fridge. It takes up almost no usable space because it's tall and thin, and my rice stays fresher longer. The container also has a measuring cup that fits inside the lid, so I never have to dig for a scoop. This is a small thing, but it's indicative of the broader Japanese approach. Every item in the kitchen, even dry goods like rice, is given a specific space-efficient home. Nothing is left in its original packaging. Everything is decanted into containers that fit the available space perfectly. Look at your dry goods. Could your rice, your flour, your sugar be stored in more space-efficient containers? Could those containers live in the fridge door, freeing up pantry space for other items? Probably yes. 2. They use the one-touch rule for everything. This is perhaps the most profound organizational principle in the Japanese kitchen, and it applies directly to the refrigerator. The one-touch rule states that you should be able to access any item with a single motion. Open the fridge, reach in, grab the item. No moving things out of the way, no unstacking and restacking, no digging, one touch. This principle forces you to design your storage around accessibility. If you have to move the milk to get to the eggs are in the wrong spot. If you have to lift a container to reach the cheese is in the wrong spot. Everything should be immediately grabbable. This sounds like it would require more space, not less. But in practice, it forces you to be ruthless about what deserves fridge real estate and how items are arranged. You can't have dead items taking up prime front row positions. You can't have a deep, inaccessible stack of containers. You have to use vertical storage, pull out bins, and clear containers so that everything is visible and reachable. When I reorganized my fridge around the one-touch rule, I was forced to confront how much stuff I had that I never actually used. The fancy mustard I bought on a whim, the jar of sundry tomatoes I opened once. They were all blocking access to the things I needed daily. I moved those infrequent items to the back of a high shelf or got rid of them entirely. The daily items moved to the front, at eye level in clear containers. Now when I open my fridge, I can grab my milk, my eggs, my vegetables, and my leftovers without touching anything else. It's vast. It's satisfying, and it keeps the fridge organized because the system is effortless to maintain. Try the one-touch rule. Open your fridge. Can you grab your 5 most used items without moving anything else? If not, rearrange until you can. Your daily life will improve more than you expect. 1. They treat the refrigerator as a sacred space, not a utility closet. The number 1 Japanese kitchen storage hack, the one that underpins all the others, is fundamentally a shift in mindset. In Japan, the refrigerator is not a dumping ground. It is not a place to shove things and forget about them. It is a sacred space, treated with the same care and respect as the rest of the kitchen. It is cleaned regularly, not once a year when something spills. It is curated, not crammed. It is a source of nourishment and life, not a graveyard for forgotten groceries. This might sound overly poetic, but the practical impact is concrete. When you treat your fridge as a sacred space, you naturally want to keep it beautiful and functional. You wipe down the shelves every week. You discard anything that's past its prime. You arrange things with intention. You feel a small sense of pride and pleasure every time you open the door. The Western relationship with the refrigerator is often one of mild resentment and neglect. It's a chore to clean. It's a source of guilt over wasted food. It's a chaotic mess that we try not to think about. Shifting that relationship is the single most powerful thing you can do. I made this shift 2 years ago, and it has changed my entire kitchen life. I now clean my fridge every Sunday. It takes 10 minutes. I pull everything out, wipe down the shelves, check for anything that needs to be used up, and put everything back with intention. The fridge stays organized because I maintain it weekly, not annually. The food waste has dropped to nearly zero because I'm constantly aware of what I have. And opening the fridge is now a genuinely pleasant experience. It's calm. It's beautiful. It's a reflection of care and respect. This is the ultimate hack. All the tension rods and clear containers and label makers in the world won't help if you don't care about the space. But if you decide that your refrigerator is worth caring for, all the practical hacks will follow naturally. Start there. Decide today that your fridge is a sacred space. Clean it, curate it, treat it with respect. Everything else will fall into place.